You know, when I think of life, I realize that we all face a lot of fears. When we live this thing called life, we face a great deal of fears. We fear the unknown. We may find ourselves in a situation we've never been in before, and we've never experienced it, and it makes us fearful. We may fear different locations. We may find ourselves being called to a location we've never been before, or to a location we don't know a lot about, and that may make us fearful. We're fearful of harm. We're fearful that some pain may come to us that we can't deal with, some pain that may cause us to be crippled or even take our lives. We may even be fearful of pain that will affect those we love, our family members, our friends, or even our co-workers. We're fearful of change. We're people of habits. We're very habitual. We like do things a certain way. We like things to be a certain way. And when those things change, we become fearful. We do face a lot of fears in our life. But you know, fear in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's really not. It's sort of a defense mechanism God has given us to kind of give us a warning, a red flag that maybe something doesn't feel right or that something may be dangerous. So fear in and of itself is not a bad thing. How you react to that fear is what decides if it's harmful or not. See, that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about today that there are times when fear is harmful. I saw this lived out in my own life when I saw and experienced in a community of people I belong to where fear just grew like a wildfire and encompassed all the people. And I pray when I tell my story today that you will learn how fear can be harmful and how you can prevent fear from becoming harmful to yourself and others. See, my name is Caleb, and this is my story. Oh, it began many, many, many years ago over in a place called Egypt, where we were slaves to the Egyptian people. We had been brought there many, many years ago, and we'd been there a long time. But God had saw fit to bring us out and make us a people of Him. He was going to make us into a nation of people that followed Him. We had been crying out for a long time, and He heard us. And He raised up a leader called Moses to lead us out of that slavery out into the desert. And my story begins, we were right on the cups of the desert. We were right on the border. See, God had promised us a land that we would settle, a land where we could grow and flourish, a land where we would become our own nation, a nation of God's people. And we were on the cusp for that. And it was time for us to go out and look at the land. So God led Moses to direct him to appoint one person from every tribe to go out and explore or spy out the land, if I may venture. I was one of those chosen. I represented the tribe of Judah. So me and 11 other men went out, and for 40 days we scouted out this land. We traveled over 200 miles looking at this land that was fertile, this land that had trees, this land that had fruit that multiplied. You could just about throw anything in the ground and it would grow up. It was that fertile. We were also told to go out and see what the people of the land were like. And we went out and we saw these people, and we saw their cities, and we saw their size, and we saw the amount of people out there, and we saw their cities. And at the end of that 40 days, we came back to give a report to Moses. But Moses wasn't the only one there. There was a whole assembly of people that represented all the tribes that are there to receive the report as well. So we came back, and we gave the report, and we began with the good stuff. Man, the land is fertile. It can grow anything. It is suited to our way of life. We're farmers and cattle people. We can use this land. And man, the fruit just multiplies and multiplies. Don't believe it? We brought back a whole stack of it, so heavy it took 2 men to carry it. Pomegranates and figs and grapes. And man, this land will sustain us. God has given us this land. And that was the good side of the report. But then they gave another side of the report, which wasn't a lie, but it was a spirit in which it was given. It was a report about the people that were there. The report talked about how the people were so many they could swallow us up. And we were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, but there were so many over there in the promised land, if they wanted to, they could just swallow us up. There were people in that land that were known as giants. Some of these people were over 7 foot tall, strong, big, bulky, and the cities that were there, they were heavy military. They were fortified. They were on high walls. They had gates. They were fortified. And while all of this was true, it was not a lie. Don't miss the spirit it was given. 10 of the people that were on the same journey with me, 10 of them gave this report in a way that incited fear in themselves. They were fearful. They gave us in a way that said, oh, these people are so big, they're going to overcome us. Oh, these people are so strong, they're going to take us. These people are so fearful. I could not believe what they were saying and what they were inciting. See, their fear was harmful because it allowed them to distort their focus. In other words, their focus on God was distorted. No longer did they remember why they went out in the land. All they could see now was the people. All they could see was the obstacle. See, they had forgotten God had given us a promise. Land and progeny, offspring. We saw the land. The land was prosperous. Progeny. Our people would continue on. We'd have offspring. And God said, I will go before you. I will give you this land. All we had to do was to go out and see what the land was like. All we had to do was go out and kind of understand the people out there. It wasn't for us to go out and try to figure out how to destroy them. It wasn't for us to go out and try to take the cities from them. All God wanted us to do is to have us be foreknown. Foreknowledge. You know, foreknowledge is forewarned. God was going to use us to do that, but these people somehow, these leaders, and these were leaders up to 10 tribes. 10 of the tribes, these were leaders in their tribes. They had lost their focus. Their focus was distorted. No longer did they see the purpose that God had went before them. They had forgotten that God already caught up a great leader, Moses. They already forgot that Moses had his own fears about being a leader, how God had used that. They had forgotten how God had brought us out here and taken care of us. They had forgotten the promise of God. All they could see was the obstacle. And they were fearful. And they forgot what God had done up to that point, and they forgot that the promise God had given them. You know, fear is powerful. Fear can cause you to lose focus. It can cause you to lose sight of God. It can cause you to not understand that God is present when it feels like nobody else is around. It can cause you to feel empty and lonely when you're going through a pain that you feel like no one else can empathize with. It can cause you to believe this is not worth it. It can cause you to believe this is not what God wants me to do. It can cause you to forget all the promises that God has given you. See, that's when fear is harmful. It is harmful when it causes you to lose sight of what God has called you to do, to lose sight that God has been with you all along, to lose sight that God is there to go before you and fight for you. When you lose that, you lose focus, you forget God, you lose your faith in Him. And this is what exactly happened to those 10 men that went with me and Joshua out there in the land to scout it out, ready to say, okay, people, let's go. But these people were so fearful, all they saw was the obstacle in their way. And I would love to say that it ended there, but it didn't. See, there's a strange thing about fear. It can spread like a wildfire. Have you ever seen a wildfire ignite? It could be out in the middle of a desert. It could be out in the middle of a forest where something is real dry. All it takes is a spark of flame or a lightning bolt to hit something. And the next thing you know, something's on fire. And with everything so dry, before you know it, everything is engulfed and it's moving and it's flowing and the fire is just burning and burning and burning. It goes from this tree to that tree, to this grass to that grass. Fear is the same thing, because what we notice that as soon as those leaders gave that report in a spirit of fear, that spirit jumped to the people and started spreading. I knew it. Joshua knew it. Moses and Aaron knew it. And God is our witness. We tried to stop that spread. Because we knew once fear got in the hearts of the people, it could not be stopped. So we immediately tore our clothes as a sign both we disagreed with their report and was in grief. And we looked at them and said, don't sin against God. God has given us His promises. Don't forget that. Have you forgotten what God has done for us in the past? Have you forgotten how God took us out of slavery? Have you forgotten how God was with us at the Red Sea? Have you forgotten how God has fed us? Have you forgotten the victories God has already given us in the military? But yet, no matter how hard we tried, once that spirit of fear started injecting in other people, we could not stop it. It spread throughout the whole nation of my people. Everyone became fearful. They began murmuring. They said, oh, God just brought us out here to die in the desert. It had been so much better to die in Egypt in slavery. At least we knew what that life was like. We knew what those people were like. But yet here we are to die here alone. And oh, when we die, those people are going to take our children and make them slaves. They're going to be plundered. And they're going to forget. And they got so mad, they were ready to stone us. See, fear is harmful when you lose your focus on God. And when you lose your focus on God and you're fearful, you can incite fear in other people that destroys their hope. Did you hear me, church? When fear enters you and it goes to other people, your fear can enter the fear of another person, destroying their hope. They had the same promises we did. God was going to give us the land. God was going to give us the offspring. God was going to make us in a great nation. God was going to use us. We were going to be different than everybody else. But once that spirit of fear took off, it entered every other person in that nation. And we could not stop it. It's interesting that the people forgot God's power as well. They forgot how they were protected when God sent all the plagues out there to affect the Egyptian people and not one Hebrew person was harmed. They forgot how their own children were saved because of the blood on the door seal when God sent a death angel and killed the firstborn, every living thing in Egypt, but yet not one Hebrew child was killed. They forgot how when their backs were against the wall and we approached the Red Sea and the sea was deep and raging and the Egyptian army was behind us, how God sent a wind to split the sea, how was they able to go across? And when the Egyptian army followed us, God stopped the wind and killed the Egyptian army. The people forgot that even when we were out there in the desert where no food or water hardly existed, God provided the food and provided the water, and God had taken care of us through this all this time. They've forgotten that God was physically present with us. When it was time for us to move, He was a cloud by day and He's a fire by night. And there was a tent, a church that only Moses and Aaron could go into, where God met with Moses personally and gave him orders. And we knew when God was present because the fog was there on the tent when God was there. They had forgotten all of this only to have their hopes destroyed by leaders who were too fearful to follow God into the unknown. It destroyed their hope. If we are not careful, and we allow fear to enter us, and we allow that fear to cause us not to focus on God, we too can incite fear in other people, and that fear in them may cause them to lose their hope in God. It may be our own family members when we're having a hard time, when we don't start believing God and we're fearful, and all of a sudden now they're starting not to believe God's grace and mercy. It may be in our co-workers where we used to be upbeat and cheerful, and now we come in and we don't talk about God anymore. We don't act like we love God anymore. It may destroy a hope that they had of ever knowing God. It may be in our own community where we begin to be fearful and we lose our focus, and other people get fear, and all of a sudden they lose their hope. See, fear is harmful. Fear is harmful when it causes you to lose your focus on God. And that the danger is that fear can spread to other people and become harming to them because they have their hope in God destroyed. But there's one more thing how fear can be harmful. See, fear is harmful Because it has the capability to change your future. Did you hear me? Fear is harmful because it has the capability to change your future. Every one of us that left Egypt had the promise of God. Every one of us had that promise that we were going to go into the land that God had given us. Every one of us had the promise that we were going to go into and have offspring that would continue the nation that God had started. But because of fear, it began in leaders who lost their focus in God. Because fear spread like wildfire into the people, they began to have their hope destroyed in God. Those who allowed fear to overtake them lost a great future. My 10 fellows who went with me on the journey, God sent a plague to kill them. The rest of the people who murmured against God, complained, ready to stone and kill us, ready to rise up a leader to go back to Egypt, God at first wanted to kill them. He was talking to Moses. Moses, I'm just going to kill them, wipe off the face of the earth, and start over with you. Moses said, God, you don't want to do that. Because what would it say to those other nations out there? It would tell Egypt that you are not as strong as God as you say you are. You're not a God who keeps his promises. You're a wrathful God. You're not a loving God. God said, you're right, Moses. But here's what I'm going to do. Every person in this community who is 20 years old and older will not enter the promised land. And to make sure that happens, you are going to wander for 40 years in this desert. 1 year for every day the spies were in the land of promise. Future changed. What about the families of the 10 men that were killed? Their futures were changed immediately. What about the rest of the people? The adults, may I say, who allowed that fear to overcome them. They lost the promise. They would not enter the land of milk and honey. Future's gone like that. All because of the spirit of fear. But you know what? I know two people whose future weren't changed. Mine and Joshua. You know the only reason our future wasn't changed? Were we fearful? Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, we did. We had fears at times, but we did not let that take our focus off God. See, matter of fact, that made us draw closer to God. That's what you need to do when you're fearful. You draw closer to God. You listen to God's voice. You get the strength of God. You get the comfort of God. You get the encouragement of God when you're fearful, because He is the one who brought you there to begin with. See, Joshua was raised up to become the leader after Moses died. And me, at an old age, 85 years old, God still allowed me to have the strength and vigor as it was 40 years before that when we started wandering in the desert to go and take the land He had promised me. At 85, my future was not changed. Those who allowed fear to take their focus off God, those who allowed fear to destroy their hope in God, yes, their futures were changed, but mine wasn't. But that 40 years was hard, because I saw my friends, my family, colleagues slowly die off. And I knew the future they had before fear entered them. I knew the future God had set before them before that fear entered them. And at times I grieved because of the future they lost. Church, have you ever sat back and wondered about a future that could have been? Not your own personal future, not